We were talking about how productivity depends on the natural resources available to a society, the physical capital, machines, equipment, buildings, etc., available to a society, and the technology that is available to a society. In this video, we'll focus on human capital. We can think of human capital at the level of a person, for example, as being determined by the person's remaining life. The greater your remaining life, the greater your human capital. Sometimes this is called life expectancy. We can think about health during remaining life, and we can think about a person's skills and education. We talked earlier about human capital affecting productivity, and that's true. The more the human capital, the higher the productivity. But human capital also affects living standards directly. The greater your human capital, the greater your enjoyment from life. We talked about how, if we go back in American history to about the year 1900, the standards of living for most Americans were such that modern Americans would regard it as dire poverty. Perhaps even more astounding is the difference between present-day Americans and Americans in the year 1900 in terms of their life expectancy and health. Not only were material standards of living much worse, people's lives were much shorter. In around the year 1900, life expectancy for Americans was about 46, 47 years of age. Life expectancy today in America is about 78 years. This is an increase of about 22 years. If you think about it in percentage terms, this is an increase of about 50%. In terms of living standards, you could argue that the improvement in health and in life expectancy was as substantial as the improvement in material circumstances. If your life expectancy increases, you become better off because, well, you can enjoy life for longer. If your health gets better, you can gain more enjoyment out of the years of life that you have left. If we think about the broad causes of this increase in life expectancy, this has mainly been due to reductions in risks to life due to primarily this was a reduction in disease. Many diseases that were prevalent and had a large effect on people's life expectancy in the year 1900 are no longer a major threat. These include diseases like polio, tuberculosis, measles, and so forth. There was also a dramatic reduction in disease that is due to contaminated water or contaminated food. There were also improvements in safety, although these were small relative to the reduction in disease. Farming, industry, homes became much safer than they were before. Now, it turns out that for most goods and services, most material goods that we consume, having an extra unit of that good is more valuable if you have a relatively small quantity of that good. So for instance, if you have very little food, then extra food is very valuable. On the other hand, if you have tons and tons of food already, extra food is not particularly valuable to you because most of your needs have been satisfied. Same sort of thing can be said about housing. If you have very little shelter, additional housing is extremely valuable because it leads to a great improvement in your standard of living. However, if you already have an enormous house, an extra room adds relatively little value because your needs, your desires were mostly already satisfied. The same sort of thing applies to clothes, shoes, and so forth. And the implication of this is that you are willing to give up less to obtain those additional units. This giving up less could be in terms of how much you are willing to pay for that. So for instance, if you have no food at all, then you are probably willing to give up whatever money you have to get food. However, if you already have lots of food, the amount of money that you are willing to give up in order to get additional food is probably going to be pretty small. The same sort of logic applies to clothing, housing, and so forth. In the case of life, this doesn't seem to apply. This major rule doesn't seem to apply to. The basic idea is that as you have more of life, by which I mean you have greater remaining life expectancy, your life actually becomes more valuable to you. That life becomes more worth protecting. It means that you are willing to give up more money, more of other types of pleasures in order to protect that life. So a higher life expectancy implies. Another way of thinking about this is that if risks to life are high, then giving up other goods or pleasures to protect your life is less attractive. This may appear counterintuitive initially. You may think that if risks to life are high, maybe what I really want to do is protect that life. Well, it turns out that it doesn't quite work like that. For example, think about a situation like this. In a society where disease is high, in a society where there is violence is high, and as a consequence there is high level of mortality, how much sense does it make to forego that slice of cake that you really like? Well, if something else is going to kill you anyway, it doesn't make too much sense to forego other pleasures and to give up money, spend a lot of money trying to protect life. When risks to life are high, value of remaining life is low because remaining life is low. Conversely, when risks to life are low, you expect to live to a ripe old age, then the value of protecting both your health and life are very high because you get to enjoy the benefits from your efforts to protect your life and health for a longer period of time.